Hello everybody, it's your boy Proftrof. We're back again with another video by Shadiversity. This is Are the Castles in Games of Thrones realistic? And as y'all let me know, after this video he went and made a Winterfell recreation in some program. So that's probably the next video we're gonna check out by him, okay? But let's see. I don't know in the okay, so the castles, the way they're shown in the TV series, most of them are garbage. They're not at all what the actual castles should be. The Greyjoy's castle looked decent because it's like in a very fucked up position. Like it would be insanely hard to take that. And King's Landing was it was very good. Everything else was trash. Yes, so let's see. But in the books, they're amazing.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and the TV show Game of Thrones has many things that are realistic in a medieval sense. Having said that though, there are also many things that Game of Thrones gets wrong, but in the larger scheme of things, in all types of medieval fantasies that have been made, Game of Thrones gets far more right than many other TV shows and movies that are based in a medieval period or theme. And so with that in mind, let's take a look and see how accurate the castles are in the Game of Thrones TV series. Now, we won't be having a look at every single castle that is featured in the TV series, but what we will be doing is having a look at some of the more prominent and common or important castles that appear in the show. Also, I will be analysing how the TV series represents or depicts these castles, because I am aware that many of these castles are described differently in the books as opposed to how they are represented in the TV show. And so this isn't a look at the castles as they are described in the books, it is specifically a look at how they are shown and represented in the TV show.
The Vale had a pretty dope castle. The Aaron's castle, what was it called? I don't remember.
Now, the difficulty in doing this is that there are very few high detailed shots of the castles in the show. Because of budget constraints, most of them, when they show the castle, they are very wide off angle shots, and there's no sweeping scenes that show the castles in all their glory from every angle. Usually it's a static image showing the castle from only one angle. But I'll do the best from some of the more detailed pictures I've been able to find of these castles, and we will start with Winterfell. Now, from this angle, Winterfell looks very, very believable. And when I say that, what I mean is that every single structure I see, I could also see that structure being built in a historical setting. Nothing is so monolithically big that would have made it impractical or impossible to be built with medieval technology, and I can't see anything that is defying the laws of architecture or physics either. And so from these perspectives, it is very believable. Some of the things that stand out to me when I look at this castle is the use of hoardings around some of the towers and also other structures. And so the hoarding or hoardings are the wooden battlements that are fixed to the outside of some of the towers. That is very historically accurate, and they were put on castles to give archers and the defenders a platform to shoot down at their enemies, and it also provided protection from incoming arrow fire. It should be noted that a bit later on in castle design, hoardings were architecturally combined with towers and castle walls as matriculations and the regular battlements. And so when that happened, hoardings were not really needed. Now, when we look at Winterfell, we actually don't see any of the embattlements or the matriculations that were extended off from the side or top of the walls, which would then mean hoardings would be the option to go with. That also identifies the architectural style of Winterfell to be a bit older in the medieval time period. And from what I understand of the Game of Thrones lore, that does make sense. The thing that I don't see is any crenellations along the outside or the outer wall, and that is very odd. That is a defensive weakness of this castle. The other odd thing that stands out to me when I look...
Didn't they take this castle with like 50 men in the show?
Look at this castle in an objective and analytical sense is the roofs of these towers, and in some of the cases of the other building structures, but it's the roofs of the towers that particularly stand out to me. And the thing about them is that they are so flat. Now, there are, castles in other cultures, not really medieval-based cultures, but in other certain cultures, where they had such flat roofs. Now, this is a fantasy, so of course this style can be incorporated onto this castle without any problem. The problem that would actually exist is a matter of functionality, okay? What is the main theme of the House of Stark? What are their words? Winter is coming. And so out of anyone in the Game of Thrones everything, so in the Game of Thrones world, it should be the Starks and the people at Winterfell who should really understand that concept. Winter is coming, and it causes changes in many things. One of the things is snow. When winter comes, you have to deal with a lot of snow. And of course, this is called Winterfell, and so it should be built to be able to handle winter and snow.
Yes.
And these flat roofs are a complete contradiction on that logic. You see, when you get heavy snow, it piles up, and if you have a flat roof, it will pile up on the roof as well. And oftentimes, that weight will be so great that the roof will not be able to support it, and it will cave in. And so what you will find in every location in a medieval period in which snow was common, the roofs were tilted at a very steep angle, and this was so the snow would slide off the edges. And so these tower roofs should have very pointed and steep angles. They should not be flat. It isn't a problem.
If that's his only problem with Winterfell, we're good. Like, I don't know.
In the summer, and the summers last a pretty long time, but so do the winters, alright? So unless they're going to replace the whole roofs when winter does eventually come, which, it does seem like it's taking...
It's okay, the Starks don't survive that long anyway, they don't have to worry about, the end of the show.
A heck of a long time, but when it eventually gets here...
As a Stark fan, that hurts me.
These roofs are not built to handle winter weather at all. So there you go, those are my thoughts on the Castle Winterfell. Let us move on to the Red Keep. Now, out of really all of the castles that I've seen in the Game of Thrones series, the Red Keep is the one that strikes me as most like a fantasy castle design. Now, don't get me wrong. What I mean when I say that the Red Keep strikes me as one of the stronger fantasy designs is in regards to its silhouette, its size, and also some of the architecture that's in it. I'm well aware that there are some castles in the Game of Thrones that seem very fantasy-esque, especially in regards to their location, like Pike Castle and the Erie. But don't worry, I'll get to them. What I mean when I say that the Red Keep strikes me as one of the stronger fantasy designs is in regards to its silhouette, its size, and also some of the architecture that's in it. Like this extended part which faces the city from the Red Keep, that is very strongly Gothic style architecture which was never traditionally used in real historical castles. Where you do find a lot of Gothic style influences in regards to castles are the fantasy interpretations of castles, like the Disney castle and so on. And so because of that, the Red Keep actually does have quite a fantasy-esque feel to it.
I like how tall it is. Look at how tall these things are.
Especially with how tall it is and how it all kind of gets taller as you go towards the center part of the castle. Now, in regards to the other architectural styles of the Red Keep, that strikes me as very authentic and realistic. You see some very effective battlements there, and you also see some realistic-looking towers. The thing that makes this castle a bit less realistic is its sheer size. It is very, very tall. There are some historical castles that you could compare in size-ish to the size of the Red Keep, but those are more the rare exceptions than what the common historical castle was. But even they would be hard-pressed to get as tall and high as what the Red Keep appears to be. In regards to the layout of the outer walls, that is actually some very good defenses, what they have right there. It has two lower baileys or wards that extend behind additional...
So it has one outside wall. It has this one, this one, this one. Oh, it has like 50 walls.
Walls from the main internal bailey, each with a fortified gatehouse. That would make assaulting this castle very, very difficult. And every other access point from the main entry is a cliff surrounded by ocean. This castle is very, very fortified and defendable. And I really like that, because even with some of the fantasy-esque elements put in its design, especially that cathedral-like Gothic-styled part to the front of it, it is still made to be very practical. And this style is actually one of my favourite kind of fantasy-style designs.
Realistic
I don't
ones?
mind, some unrealistic and fantasy-style embellishments, especially in size and grandeur, as long as we keep it grounded in realism and practicality and
But what about dragons?
function. And the Red Keep really strikes me in that regard, that this is what they have done. Alright, so there you go. That is the Red Keep.
Okay.
Now let's move on to Castle Pike, the stronghold and
I
center.
am really curious about what it's gonna say. Like, I don't think you can actually build a castle like this. Like, that would not be possible, right? How the fuck would you build it so it would stay like that and not fall every 15 years? Something would fall from the castle and eventually the whole thing would just collapse down on itself. But let's pretend that you can, and you did. How do you take this castle? Plus, I'm not okay. How good of an idea is it to separate your castles with little gates? Because, like, okay, they attack this part, which is the first part of the castle that they got to attack, right? In order to take it. And they take it. And now you have people in here trying to fight the people in here. That would be a little weird, no? And, I'm quite curious. Like, if this was realistic, would it not be best to focus all your defenses on this part? So if inadvertently they take the first keep, right? This part would not have any defenses. So, like, have it low without any walls, because no one's gonna come from down here up the castle, right? That's crazy. Plus, you have these walls up here. Wouldn't that be better? Like, having this whole backside non-existent. Like, maybe like very small walls, not defendable, just like in there, just being there. Because, like, no one's gonna surround this castle. How the fuck are you gonna surround this shit? You're not gonna scale this thing, especially with the archers up here. The only way you're gonna take it is from here. No one's gonna climb this. No way. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think?
Of House Greyjoy. Now, apart from location, alright, Pike strikes me as one of the most historically authentic castle designs in the Game of Thrones. Now, it's interesting. You could kind of consider Pike as 4 different kind of castles, but they're grouped together, and each one leads to and from the other, and so it's considered, this is one castle altogether. But with each one of these individual, castle bodies, they are very, very historically authentic. They are clearly inspired by some of the earlier designs of castles, specifically the Norman keep-style castles, which were far more square and blocky than they were rounded. Also, the battlements at the top are not extended outwards from the rampart. And again, these are the style of battlements that are very common to have hoardings fixed to them in times of war. But the crenellations are there, as well as individual towers. What is also extremely authentic about this castle is the lack of windows on the outside. There's barely any. What you really see are mostly arrow slits and maybe 1 or 2 windows on the higher up levels. That is very, very accurate, because windows are a huge weakness on actual real castles. Now to its location, and from a cursory look, you could consider that structures built on sea stacks like this would be extremely improbable. Well, in reality, yes and no. You see, there are some legitimate historical structures that are built on as improbable locations, almost, because the big clincher for Castle Pike is that it's at the sea, or on the seashore. If it wasn't on the seashore, it would be far more plausible, because there are some actual real structures in the world that are built on very comparable kind of rock formations, just not at the sea, like the monasteries of Meteora. Just have a...
What the fuck? Jesus Christ, wow.
look at some of the rock formations that these monasteries are built upon. The difference is that these rock formations are under far less danger of erosion than if they were at the sea.
True.
You see, a sea stack, which is what several of the castle structures of Castle Pike are built upon, are formed by sea erosion. And once they are formed, they don't last forever, and their stability is also questionable. Now, if they were very stable and strong, and it would take several hundred years for the erosion to fully take out that sea stack, well then it could be plausible for you to build a structure atop it, but it would not last forever. And I think that's kind of what they're implying with Castle Pike as well, is that these sea stacks, they're slowly eroding, and so this castle is not going to, remain intact for much longer. But for the time that...
Just like the Greyjoy's little beliefs. We shall not sow. We shall not sow. Oh, raiders. Oh.
That it would stay there, it is incredibly defensible. Like, oh my goodness. The other towers behind the first primary castle body would basically be impenetrable. You would not be able to get them from really any other location with an army sizable enough to overtake it. And the castle as a whole just looks awesome. True. This is a beautiful castle for its medieval authenticity and also the novelty of its unique location, which is not as unrealistic as it might appear. It's impractical, don't get me wrong, and there are far more chances of those sea stacks being unstable than they are stable, but if they were stable, well, then you might get away with it. It just definitely would not last forever. Now, much of what we've talked about Castle Pike in regards to its location can be applied to the Erie as well. The difference is the Erie is not on the seashore, and so that means if its rock foundation...
Now this thing, I don't know. Like, I think it needs a couple more gatehouses along the way. Like, from what we can see, there's like one here, right? And that's it. But then again, you have one road in. And, there is more. There's one, maybe one here. I'm not sure what the hell that is. So, like, how would you even... the problem with this is you can overrun it, right? And that's usually the best way to take out a small defense position, is to overrun it with people. You cannot overrun it because you cannot have a whole army on these little little bridges. Interesting.
Is stable enough, this structure could be feasibly built in reality. It would be incredibly difficult, and what they would have needed to do first is build access to the top of this rock formation, so they would have had to have built that long winding road first. But we've built comparable roads and walls like that in history. Think about the Great Wall and the mountains that thing snakes over. And once you have access to the top of this rock formation, you would then need to bring up every stone one at a time to actually build the structure. And if the foundation was stable enough, you could get away with it, because there are some historical comparisons that we can make. Of course, the real life...
What is this? How do you get up there? You just teleport? Use your Hearthstone?
Historical ones don't have anything near as grand as the Erie built atop them, but they are built in comparably difficult locations. Now, in regards to the architectural style, it's very hard. I found it difficult to find any close-up images of the area itself, only these far wide-angle shots. But from the look of it, it looks to be a very domed-like structure with domed roofs. And not really a castle, more of a cathedral or palace. I don't really see many embattlements on it. And, in reality, if this was real, you wouldn't need many embattlements on it. It is so high up, okay, and so difficult to get to, that its sheer location is defense enough, and the main part you would need to defend is that snaking wall and road that leads to it. You put enough gatehouses along the way on that road, and you could hold off an army of limitless size almost, because there is only one access point to get to this castle. And without inventing aircraft, there's really no way you could try and take on this structure.
I remember what Bronn said. What did he say? What was the quote exactly? Give me 5 good men and climbing equipment, I'll take that. You're not taking that shit.
structure, apart from a long-term siege to starve them out, as it is presented in the TV series. Now, from the angle and perspective we have in this shot, the erie would be incredibly big, like absolutely huge, far bigger than a castle would ever have been in history. But the erie isn't really a castle. Just like I said before, it's more of a grand domed palace and cathedral than it is a castle. And historically, we do have palaces of incredible size. The thing that needs to be remembered though, even though it could be feasibly possible to build a structure like this in real life, it would be incredibly impractical and just unbelievably difficult. So much so that I don't think anyone would ever really do it in real life. But that's just my opinion, I could be wrong there. And finally, let's take a look at Dragonstone. Now, out of all the castles that we have looked at so far, Dragonstone by far is a no-fuss militaristic fortress. It doesn't care about looking fancy or embellished, it is just down and dirty, right here to do a job. Now, of course, just because of its size and its imposing look, it does look grand and impressive, but there's just no embellishments to dress it up. What's also interesting about this castle, it actually has some fairly advanced defensive designs in it, specifically with those kind of spiked jutting out portions on the wall. Now, that kind of design is something that you would find more on a star fort than on an actual medieval castle. Now, a star fort, or a bastion fort, is a fortress that arises after the medieval period, and it was a style that evolved during the age of gunpowder when the cannon came to dominate the battlefield. Now, the purpose of these sharp jutting out parts on the wall was to deflect cannon fire. Now, of course, cannons don't exist in Westeros yet, so it does beg the question as to why this design philosophy was adopted in
Well, he's technically correct, I think. I don't think they exist in Westeros, but outside of Westeros.
Dragonstone as opposed to other castles. But even without cannon fire, these extended portions of the wall serve a very functional purpose. It gives the defenders on the wall greater purchase to fire down on enemies. What you'll notice about the battlements on the edge of Dragonstone is that they have matriculations there. The embattlement is extended outwards a bit from the rampart on the wall, and then you have corbels holding up those embattlements, which would then have matriculations in between, which are places where the defenders on the wall can shoot arrows or drop rocks down on anyone trying to assail the walls, which, I mean, that's kind of superfluous because I don't see anyone even getting close to the walls because Dragonstone is situated on a cliff at the sea. But hey,
yeah, can you imagine how slimy these rocks would be? You're not climbing that shit. You're not climbing that.
Why not? It's just, you know, further security. It gives them peace of mind. And then we come to size, and as I kind of gauge the size that Dragonstone appears to be compared to other medieval castles, I get the impression that Dragonstone is easily bigger than any historical castle ever built. That's not a criticism, because again, this is fantasy, they can get away with that. It's just important to note, so people don't get confused, that historical castles were not this big. And there you have it. These are my thoughts on the castles in the TV series Game of Thrones. I hope you have enjoyed. If you would like to learn more about the differences between the classic fantasy castle and historical castles, please go watch my video, The Castle, Fantasy vs. Reality. And until then, farewell.
Farewell, shut. Anyway, I think next time we'll check out this, the true Winterfell according to the books. What do you guys think? Let me know. Anyway, quick thank you to the Patreons. Pedro Martinez, Camargo Cunha, Rob Berry, Swasteric, Phil Chicken 53, Senior Hilter, Lemon Monarch, My Dash, Oranek, Nara James Bzone, Ryuga Hide. 25. As I said in the other videos, I'm gonna say it again. I will be streaming some reactions today, so if you want to come, I'll be checking out whatever chat wants me to check out. So yeah, hope y'all enjoyed and have a nice day, everybody.